see everyone? Sorry, my voice is not very good. Okay, once again, Jamasi. Thank God for this opportunity to stand before you all to share some of the thoughts that God has put in my heart. And so let's turn to our Bible, the book of Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verse 35 to verse 45. Mark chapter 10, chapter 10, verse 35, following. Okay, I hope you got it. Mark chapter 10, verse 35. I will read for everyone. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him saying, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." And he said to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Grant us that we may sit one on your left hand and the other on your right hand, and the other on your left hand, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They said to him, "We are able." So Jesus said to them, "You will indeed drink the cup that I drink, and with the baptism I am baptized with you will be baptized. But to sit on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it is prepared." And when the 10 heard it, they began to be greatly displeased with James and John. But Jesus called to them himself and said to them, "You know that those who are considered rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever of you desires to be first shall be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." God bless. I'm just reading and listening to his words. Okay, let's imagine that the disciples of Jesus were in a theological seminary, which is called Jesus Theological Seminary. Okay, and so these disciples of Jesus were in a seminary to have a degree, PhD degree for 3.5 years, including their internship. Okay, so let's imagine that, and the founder of that seminary was Jesus. Okay? And so Jesus had just one piece of advice for those who want to be great. Right? Jesus had one advice. People, especially for the disciples, wanted to be great. And it's a question for us. How many of you want to be a great in the future? How many of you want to be known as a great preacher or great, pastor? I asked my little girl when she was just 3 years like that, I guess, what do you want to be when you grow up? She said, "I want to be princess." So I mean, it depends on the kids. If the child is a boy, he would say Spider-Man, right? So, like, even in this context, if you read the text, you will see Jesus' advice. If you want to be great, you have to start serving. Greatness is serving in the kingdom of God, right? So, in verse 42, let me read again. But Jesus called to himself and said to them, "You know that those who are considered rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and the great ones exercise authority over them." nations or wherever, people, they try to exercise their authority over us. They try to control us. Right? You can see in any field, people, whoever they are in good positions or in a higher position, they will try to dominate you or control you. But here, Jesus' teaching is so different and difficult. If you want to be great, start serving. Greatness is serving. Greatness is achieved by serving. This seems okay for us because we have been reading the scripture and we know, we have read many times, right? But for the other people, non-believers or other people, for them it could be very strange, unusual, strange to hear this. Greatness is serving. Greatness comes from serving. It's very, it could be strange for the other people. But why I said this? Because generally people understand success or greatness is, they always look at in terms of power, positions, prestige, popularity and property, right? This is what people understands. The word of greatness or the meaning of greatness. But before we read this text, you can come across different verses, Bible verses or chapters, where Jesus began to tell his disciples what would happen to him in few days. Okay, if you read in chapter 8, verse 31, chapter 9, verse 31 to 35, and then chapter 10 to verse 32 to 34, you can see these chapters where Jesus is telling the disciples that his death and resurrection, soon will take place. He is going to suffer. He will suffer in the hands of Pharisees and the leaders of the Jewish. Jesus was pouring out his heart. He was prophesying or telling the future, the events that are going to happen. But despite Jesus' teaching and showing his disciples, his students, what it means by following him and what it would be like in the coming few days, they were totally lost in disputes. They were talking about who was going to be great, who was going to sit next to Jesus. They were lost in disputes, or they were arguing about who was going to be great. See, they were occupied. Their minds, their thoughts, they were fully occupied by the worldly worries, possessions, money, or power. Okay, that is why if you read in the beginning verse, you will see two brothers coming to Jesus and asking him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Whatever we ask, we want you to do for us." And so we see what their demands was, their request. What was their request? They said, "Grant us that we may sit one on your right hand," and the right hand is here, and the other one, and the other on your left hand. They were asking for a position, for a place to be known as great John or great James, right? They forgot, these disciples, they forgot that they were in Jesus' seminary to equip as a servant leader. They forgot the purpose of coming in the seminary while they were pursuing the studies. Hopefully, let's just guess that they were in the final year of PTH course. They were in the final year, and they forgot why they came here in the seminary, and so they were prompted to ask this question. Let us sit in one of us in your right, one of us in your left. They were claiming, they were trying to reserve the seat, the position, right? So I don't know how many of you, while in your studies here, maybe in a few months or years, how many of your decision, your commitment is diverted, because many things comes in our way. While this time when I went to Pokhara, there were a lot of diversions. they gave us alert. There were signs of diversions because of the road expansion. And so that picture came to my mind that we need that kind of diversion sometimes, because we are booked, we are very much driven up, our commitment, our thoughts, our purpose of coming here sometimes can be driven out, or can be, we can be confused. Okay, so Jesus is, when they raised this question, Jesus did not directly reject them, but he called them. He called all the disciples closer to him, and he had a good conversation with them. Right? So, Jesus, the disciples, they were very much oriented. What kind of oriented? They were self-oriented. They had a self-interest rather than others' interest. Jesus said, whoever of you desire to be first shall be slave of all, or whoever wants to be great among you shall be your servant. The disciples, during the studies in Jesus Seminary, they were being occupied with self-interest. They were thinking about them, the power, or what could they become in the future. So I'm not saying don't study, okay? Don't study hard. We have to study hard. We have to work hard, either in academic or in any of our during our developing our skills. Okay, we have to work hard. Unless you work hard, you can never reach, or you can never be that person God intended. We have to work hard. But here, the intention of the disciples were very different. Right? They were really self-oriented disciples, and so from tomorrow onwards, don't tell to your friends that serving is, greatness is serving. So do my homework, do my assignments, okay? Don't please ask your friends like that. But, the kind of, the way we deal with others, sometimes it's like we are dominating. We intend to dominate, or the people who are less talented, or those are a little silent, we try to dominate them. Right? So be aware how you deal with people. Like the disciples, when the others, they heard that these two brothers were what they were asking, they became indignant. They were angry with them. That means they were all, they had some kind of this influence of, thinking of power, positions. Right? Not only these two brothers, the rest of the disciples, they were all occupied with this, the understanding of greatness was no more there, right? They understood that greatness is something related to positions or power. Yeah, so, when Jesus said, Jesus raised here one question in verse 38. Jesus said to them, you do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? They said to him, we are able. These disciples, these two brothers said, they confessed that we are able, and it happened to them. But we have no idea whether they confessed knowingly or unknowingly the meaning of cup and the baptism. Nonetheless, after being empowered in the book of Acts chapter 2, after being empowered by the Holy Spirit, James became the first disciple to be martyred by the king Herod in Acts chapter 12. And then John, he became the last disciple to die as a captive prisoner for Christ at the old age on Patmos Island. And this disciple John, he was the last person looking at the cross of Jesus. When Jesus was at the cross, only John was there. And all the disciples, they ran away. They escaped, But John was there standing, looking at Jesus at the cross. We don't know whether they knew the meaning of the suffering cup, because the cup signifies suffering. So I don't know. We don't know how far they have understood the meaning of the suffering or the baptism, But they said we are able, and we also have said to God in prayers, maybe, that I am willing to go wherever you go, wherever you lead us. I am willing to die. Maybe that was one time your prayer or your commitment. But let me ask you, how many of you are ready to really take the cup of suffering, the cup of misunderstanding? Sometimes we are being misunderstood. The cup of rejection. I don't know how many of you have gone through this rejection, the feeling of rejection from your family, friends, your loved ones. And then the cup of insufficiency. Sometimes we have no money to buy a pain, but then we can go further, boldly identify with Christ's death and resurrection. Whether we have sufficient money or not, we can boldly, we can commit ourselves to declare the death and resurrection to others. Right? Let's read verse 14. But to sit on the right hand and on the left hand is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it is prepared. When you read this verse, it shows the humility and the submissiveness of Jesus. Jesus was humbled. He was submitted to God the Father. Right? The same event you can read in Matthew chapter 20, verse 20 to till 28. The same event, but little bit twist there. Right? You can see the mother of these two brothers coming to Jesus, asking him, asking Jesus to place one of his sons on the right and the other on the left. The mother is coming there in that picture. And so I don't know whether these two brothers forced their mom to ask Jesus for this request, But when we go through with this text, and you will come across the mother of these two brothers was Salome. And who was Salome? Salome was the sister of Mary and the mother of Jesus. Right? That means Jesus was close cousins were James and John. They were cousins. They were, relatives. Right? And maybe that's why Salome, she could come boldly and ask Jesus for the position. Right? This is very much similar in our context. You can see, if Prakash, I call him Jojo, brother, if he's the Prime Minister, then I will batter him, Jojo, and he will put me in a foreign affairs minister or in any positions. Why? Because there's a culture of buttering people. We used to butter chapasigani, If you want anything, if your demand is to be a minister, you want to be in some kind of water irrigation, or which position you want. You can butter to, suppose my relative is in a higher position, you can butter. Chapasigana sakcha, chapasigana tapai mati त्यो पद दिन सक्छ. It doesn't matter whether you are qualified or not. तपाईँको पढाइ छ कि छैन थाहा छैन, but then it's the culture, it is the system like this here. Everywhere. You can bribe, you can pay money and buy degree, position. Right? A lot of things people do with money. But the teaching of Jesus is very different here. Jesus did not say to these two brothers or to the mother, "Oh, you are my relatives. Okay, I'll put you in. John, you become the what is that? Assistant, foreign minister, right? Or water irrigation minister, and education minister." No. Jesus never did that. Right? What did Jesus say? He said, "But to see on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it is prepared." Jesus is giving credit to God. It is not on my hand. I cannot decide. See, you see the humility, right? त्यहाँ कुनै चाप्लुसी गरेको छैन, बटरिङ गरेको छैन, घुस खाएको छैन. So, in the eyes of worldly people or in the secular world, for people, greatness is compared with the possession, power, money, right? But in Jesus' kingdom or understanding, it is very different. You know? And that's why what we understand from here is that serving can give us that opportunity to become great. We don't have to show up. God sees how true we are, in serving. How do we have that attitude of serving? I mean, I hardly see nowadays, right? Especially even in church or in youngsters in their lives, we hardly see the attitude of serving, helping people, right? The disciples wanted to be great. Every one of us want to be great, of course, right? I want to be great, but not in the way worldly people they see greatness. But I want to be great in the way Jesus has described, by serving, by helping. Right? There's I just read an example of, or heard a story of Albert Schweitzer from Germany. He was a pastor, very talented man, an author, very gifted man, But then, he, at the age of 30, he decided to leave his career. All the fame or the facilities, right? He was a pastor, of course. He decided to leave everything and become a medical doctor, and for which he studied very hard, right? That's why I'm not saying you don't have to study, right? You have to study hard to reach that greatness or to that position. You have to study hard. And this man, Albert Schweitzer, he studied medical, and then after he became a doctor, he went to Africa as a medical doctor, and he built his hospital there. He served the leper, people who were infected with leprosy, right? And then he served the people there for many years. And in 1952, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts, for his sacrifice, for his service, right? So what really strikes about Albert is not how many awards he accomplished or he got, he received. But the amazing thing is that he discovered the wonderful secret of the Christian life. He said, every person I know who has been truly happy has learned how to serve others. Isn't it interesting, Albert discovered that every person I've seen who were very happy in life, were the one who learned to serve others. And Jesus is the true model of becoming great by serving. So let's examine ourselves. Disciples were in the seminary, in Jesus Seminary, but their focus were, disoriented. They lost their focus. They forgot why they came to seminary. So let's ask this question: how are you pursuing greatness? Is it by becoming, by fighting? There's an example in James chapter 3. There's a question. There's a question: why there's fight among you? Why there's fight among you? Why? Because there's their heart's desire. He wants to fulfill their heart's desire. And many times our heart's desires are wrong. It ends us with jealousy, fighting, misunderstanding. And that's why if we want to create harmony and peace among us, let's have this attitude of Jesus. Greatness is that. Greatness is achieved by serving. So let's go with this understanding that greatness is Jesus never compared greatness with money, positions, or with popularity, but by serving. God bless us from reading or hearing this